from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Happy to be here with you this Wednesday night. We're live, we're national. Big shout out to Cumulus Radio in Tennessee. I'm here in Nashville, live in Nashville tonight, and beautiful studio digs here. Our friends at WTN are just across the hall, and so many other legendary Nashville stations, so thank you to them. And lots of news today. We're going to get into our late night national town hall conversation, hoping that you'll join me. You know the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And let's see, we got Tulsi Gabbard getting confirmed today as the Director of National Intelligence, the DNI, speaking briefly with El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th President of these United States. Listen to this.
Mr. President, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for the trust that you have placed in me to fulfill this critical position as Director of National Intelligence at any time, but specifically during this time. Unfortunately, the American people have very little trust in the intelligence community, largely because they've seen the weaponization and politicization of an entity that is supposed to be purely focused on ensuring our national security. So I look forward to being able to help fulfill that mandate that the American people delivered to you very clearly in this election, to refocus our intelligence community by empowering the great patriots who have chosen to serve our country in this way, and focus on ensuring the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. As you've said, Mr. President, this is what I've dedicated my life to, and it is truly humbling to be in this position, to serve in your administration, help to rebuild that trust, and ultimately to keep the American people safe.
Again, Tulsi Gabbard sworn in today inside of the Oval Office, and some kind words there, and I believe her to be very genuine. I really do. Now, I want to also point out there was, I believe, Count Delacula, you tell me if I'm right or wrong, but we have a clip of the hostage who was released, and do we have that? All right, let's roll that one.
I feel like the luckiest man on earth right now. And I want you to know that I am not a hero in this at all. And President Trump is a hero. These men that came from the diplomatic service are heroes. The senators and representatives that passed legislation in my honor to get me home are the heroes.
Again, that is Mark Fogel, who was imprisoned for a very long time and finally released. Happy to hear it. I mean, honestly, you could hear it in his voice how sincere he is, right? In his sentiment. And I can't imagine a lot of this, honestly. You start to think about it, and it's like, man, they accused him of money laundering. Well, there was a money launderer, that they released in exchange for him. And it's just it's great to see every single day something else is happening, and it's all positive. I was getting some coffee in the break room, just, 10 or 11 minutes ago, and bumped into one of the staff here in Nashville, a guy named Brian Egan, good guy. And we were talking about how just since the 20th of January, which he was telling me was his birthday. He's like, oh, my birthday's January 20th. He's like, I feel like I've been getting birthday gifts every day since. And I said, me too. And it's not my birthday. But the reality is every day there's major news happening. DOGE is unearthing so much of the shenanigans that go on in the Washington swamp. We've got hostages being brought home. This latest news, you've got El Trompito now saying, I want to talk to Putin. I want to talk to Zelensky. What's going on? He gets on the phone and they're looking for peace, right? And of course, the left will criticize. But in the 4 years of Biden's administration, all we saw was this exacerbate tension between Ukraine and Russia to the point of the invasion, right? Or what some would say, reclaiming the Russian land, whichever side of the fence you're on. I tend to think Ukraine is sovereign and they should be left alone. But be that as it may, Trump jumps on the horn with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and they're trying to figure out a way to get this done. Why didn't Joe El Baboso Biden do that? Right? Why do I have to wait for El Trompito to come in and say on Truth Social, and here's the quote from him, do it in my best Trump voice possible, I just had a lengthy and highly productive phone call with President Vladimir Putin of Russia. We discussed Ukraine, the Middle East, energy, artificial intelligence, the power of the dollar, and various other subjects. We both reflected on the great history of our nations and the fact that we fought so successfully together in World War II. Remembering that Russia lost tens of millions of people, and we likewise lost so many. We talked about the strengths of our respective nations and the great benefit. Hold on, bear with me. Anyway, it runs out. Oh, there it is. It's a pretty long tweet here. I'm not going to get everything. But he goes into talking about we have a campaign motto of common sense. We're working with Marco Rubio, Steve Witkoff, blah, 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 blah. And he keeps going on. The release yesterday of Mark Fogel, a wonderful man that I personally greeted last night at the White House. And these are all great things. And again, very positive things, right? So day in and day out, things are happening, positive things are happening. And I remember when Trump said, are you going to be tired of winning? I am not tired of winning, sir. I think this is what I'm used to, right? I was brainwashed as a child, by Hulk Hogan and Sergeant Slaughter and Sylvester Stallone as Rocky into loving this country. And I'm glad I was. I believe in the United States. I love the United States. And I'm happy to see that the United States is, in my opinion, becoming great again. Because you know what? People say, when was a time when America was actually great? Well, I can tell you. When I was a little kid in the 80s, when Reagan was in office, I thought America was fantastic. And I think everybody that I met who wasn't from America loved America. All over the place, they loved America. You went on vacation with the U.S. dollar, everybody wanted one. Not the case anymore. I was in Colombia last year. Nobody really cared. I was in Budapest last year. Nobody really cared if you had dollars. They wanted euros or the Hungarian currency. That was it. They weren't interested in the dollar. Now, I understand times change, but they don't seem to be changing for the better. And that's part of what I think MAGA, Making America Great Again, is all about. So kudos to El Trompito. And I'm glad that he's doing the job, right? He's doing the job for America. Anyway, I want to keep going here. We got a few more things I want to cover here. We've got inflation, as we've been suspecting, is likely going to be coming back because of some late spending by Biden on his way out. Not even on his way out, in that whole last quarter. And what else do we have here? Well, anyway, let me give you a little preview of what is to come, because we've got a lot going on tonight in our program. A little while from now, we're going to have a conversation regarding DOGE, right? Because, again, every day we uncover more and more things, and yet there's still so much. So we're going to talk about the resistance to the DOGE committee and what can be done. How do we stop the people that are saying DOGE is unconstitutional, DOGE is illegal, DOGE is this, and DOGE is that? And then we're going to talk about the latest. We're going to get an update on what is happening with this crazy gang, right? Our conversation on Tren de Aragua, the Venezuelan gang, is something I'd like to get your input on. and, of course, so much more. I mean, there's lots to discuss. We've got Jonathan Tobin's report from Israel. So I want to hear from you all, the American people, as well, on open phones across America. You know the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Now, I find it ironic, of course, that our chairwoman, Congresswoman Green, is in charge of running this committee. Now, in the last Congress, Chairwoman Green literally showed a pic in our oversight congressional hearing, so I thought I'd bring one as well. Now, this, of course, we know is President Elon Musk. He's also the world's richest man. He was the biggest political donor in the last election. He has billions of dollars in conflicts of interest.
That is Congressman Robert Garcia. He's at a DOGE subcommittee hearing on government waste earlier today in D.C., and he's saying that Elon Musk is up. Bleep. Now, I thought that was interesting because it's just one more that's piling on, right? Shots fired. Everybody's taking shots at Elon Musk. And this is, I guess, par for the course, right? You've got to expect that. But little do they know, or little did they expect, that El Trompito, Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th president of these United States, El Presidente, was going to make these unprecedented moves and cement them so well in legality. Everybody's saying, is DOGE legal? Is it not legal? Is it constitutional? I don't see DOGE in the Constitution. Elon Musk is a peckerhead and blah, blah, blah. All right, they're saying all sorts of things. Well, I want to get to the bottom of this because I think they've done this the right way. But don't take my word for it. I want to talk to our guest. Leslie Corbly is an attorney, an author, and a columnist. You can check her out at lesliecorbly.com, and she's with us. Leslie, welcome back.
Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. So talk to us about USDS, or the United States DOGE service.
Sure. So, man, if it hasn't ignited quite the controversy, so many lawsuits have been filed in light of DOGE, but really it's a renamed it's a renamed agency that Obama created, which was U.S. Digital Services. So Trump issued his executive order renaming the agency U.S. DOGE Services, and then authorizing small DOGE teams to go to each agency to review IT efficiency and systems, essentially.
And I don't know about you, but to me this seems like a really, really smart thing to do for many reasons, because it already existed. So he's not, in effect, creating something new, but kind of replacing an existing agency.
Yes. So he's essentially kind of repurposing to some degree an existing agency, which was a smart move. Rather than trying to create a whole new agency, he sort of just took an existing structure and is, like I said, sending his teams in to look at the IT systems and essentially how to ensure things are more efficient.
So, yeah, in effect, making this this U.S. digital service that Obama created was, as I'm looking at it, software development for the bureaucracy. And I find this to be so ironic, right? The irony is so rich, because they're saying, oh, Elon Musk wants to use AI software and he wants to use his own computer and he wants to do all that. Well, that's kind of what Obama created this service to do. So now that it's kept the original acronym, the USDS, the United States DOGE Service, which I just think is such a great troll on the left, it's pretty exciting. Now, talk to us about the legal benefits of doing it this way, and I guess not having to deal with requesting new money for a new department per se.
Sure, he didn't have to worry about requesting new money. He didn't have to go through some of the other legal loopholes that are associated with creating a new agency. There's like transparency acts. I'm sure he was trying to avoid things of that nature that would have slowed down, well, would have certainly procedurally slowed down the process and made it much more difficult to implement. Using an existing agency means there's already appropriated funds and just makes the process much more smooth.
Now, what do you think of these challenges, Leslie, that are being presented against DOGE? Every day there's a new judge saying, we're going to hold off on this, we're going to hold off on that. Why are they getting so much? I say this somewhat tongue-in-cheek and as the devil's advocate. My take is that these judges are not necessarily focused on jurisprudence, but they're, I think, political hacks in many ways, and they're just trying to stop things. But if I'm wrong, you tell me.
There's no shock that there was a lot of litigation. I think that surprises no one. What Trump is doing is somewhat novel. So again, no surprise that there's litigation. Also, no surprise that you're going to end up with judges who may be willing to say sign up on a temporary restraining order or things of that nature that perhaps other judges would not. There are lots of problems you could identify with those rulings, but at the end of the day, Trump will continue to appeal this, and I think you can tell from the way his administration has been handling this that they kind of expected some of these fights. You see a lot of things like the OMB issued a guidance, and then during litigation rescinded that guidance. You've seen Trump's administration attempting to abide by the restraining order and had to gain clarification from the court. So I think some of these things were fairly anticipated, and there's just a lot of moving parts as it's going into practice because, you poke the belly of the beast and you end up with a fight on your hands. And so I don't think there's any surprise there. Trump is laying the groundwork for appeal as well. He seems to be coming in this term with a far more sophisticated team behind him. So I don't really think there's been too many. Obviously, no one could predict exactly what happened, but that there would be a fight, I think, was fairly foreseeable.
Now, Leslie, in the minute or so we have remaining, I just want to get your take on, do you think that many of these actions, these legal actions, do they have something to worry about, or is a lot of this just fodder?
It's hard to say. I think what happened with the one most recent restraining order, and I say most recent because there are so many lawsuits that have been filed, but there was one where the judge ruled today, this morning, to clarify Trump could indeed, for example, freeze certain federal funding if there were concerns about the funding violating the law. I think that one was pretty egregious, and I don't think I'm not particularly surprised that the judge ended up granting Trump's request. But that being said, it kind of, in practicality, rendered his initial restraining order somewhat moot because, I think the Trump administration, at least from its commentary to the public, was attempting to halt federal funding to the extent that it violated law.
Folks, we're coming right back with Leslie Corbly, attorney, author, and columnist. Check her out at lesliecorbly.com. She's on X as well. And we're going to continue this conversation on Elon Musk and how much he's going to get sued as part of the Trump administration, the head of DOGE. Folks, keep it locked right here. I'm Rich Valdez, coming right back with Leslie Corbly.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I would love for Elon Musk to come to the briefing room. That's why we had him go to the Oval Office yesterday, where I think he provided great answers. He was speaking in layman's terms, speaking common sense to all of you in the media, but also to Americans at home. But I would say especially to all of you in the media, because I think it's a real fallacy that there's this alleged lack of transparency when it comes to DOGE. President Trump and Elon Musk have been incredibly transparent on what DOGE is doing. There is an X account with the DOGE handle. They are tweeting out what they are doing on a daily basis. They have a website where they are posting the receipts of the contracts that they are reviewing and the payments that they have stopped from going out the door. The secretaries of our departments have stopped from going out the door. And I would also say that before it was Elon Musk making our government efficient and accountable, it was some unnamed bureaucrat that none of you knew. Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. He's also now one of the most highly scrutinized men in the world alongside President Trump because of what he's doing and the access that he is allowing. So there's great transparency. As for the actual receipts, we are happy to provide them, and I actually brought some today because all of you know I love to bring the receipts. We have contracts upon contracts that we can send and provide this information to you. Let me be very clear. We are not trying to hide anything. We have been incredibly transparent, and we will continue to be.
That's Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, and calling it the way she sees it. Love that. I want to ask our guest, Leslie Corbly, a question. And, of course, it's in the frame. I'm going to frame the question the way it's framed in the Washington Post just about a week and a half ago. U.S. government officials are privately warning that Musk's blitz appears illegal. The billionaire's DOGE team has launched an all-out assault on federal agencies, triggering numerous legal objections. Leslie Corbly, in your opinion as an attorney and a columnist, do you think that what Musk and the DOGE people are doing is illegal?
I'm not really following the train of logic that says it's illegal. I can understand why people may not like it,
right.
But I will say there are some, with the caveat that there are going to be some, I think, legitimate disputes related to the separation of powers. For example, how much funding can the president unilaterally withdraw? I think it's clear that he can withdraw some funding for certain reasons. It is unclear exactly where that line is, right? Because Congress does appropriate funds. That being said, those I think are probably going to be a smaller set of issues rather than the, you're seeing really just a blitz of litigation surrounding DOGE, and some of that will, get hammered out in the courts. I think some of the claims will end up being quite frivolous and meritless, and you'll probably end up with a few that move forward.
Now, the executive branch taking these types of actions to offer people buyouts, something you see in the private sector quite often. I've seen commentary, and I think it was even one judge that said we can't do that right now or put a pause on it. What's your take on that, the legal analysis on the executive branch offering buyouts?
Generally speaking, again, I'm not sure I see initially the issue there. I will say I'm still neck deep in reading some of the specifics of these lawsuits because there are so many, and they are, they are moving forward very rapidly, and there's a lot of changes and in the different lawsuits, some of which are more important than others. I thought the restraining order related to grant funding, for instance, was extremely impactful, partially because it cuts at the heart of what Trump is really trying to do, and because it brings that really into the focus of the public, which I think is one of his goals with DOGE, is to not only litigate in the courts, because again, that's a slower process. Litigation is unfortunately not generally designed to be speedy, but he's bringing this also before the public, right? Kind of highlighting, okay, to what extent should U.S. taxpayers be on the hook for possibly funding illegal activity, right? You don't want your government involved in that. And I think that, again, goes to the core of why the public is behind him. And that's a very important aspect of DOGE, is this transparency piece that is fascinating to me, because with as much information as there is out there, it seems that there's still this denial element going on in the media, whereas rather than scrutinizing and looking into these allegations coming out of DOGE and out of the Trump administration, there seems to be this continued pushback of, are you being completely accurate, right? Which is the job of the media to suss out, right? Isn't that their entire, that's kind of their entire job, is to determine the validity of these claims rather than kind of taking a side. And so I think that knee-jerk sort of denial of the problem, of the deep and really serious corruption going on in D.C. is emblematic of why Trump won the election to begin with, and I don't think it's going to push the public anywhere except further to the Republican Party.
Leslie Corbly, I want you to let everybody know where they can find your columns and how they find, everything that you're working on.
Sure. So lesliecorbly.com is the easiest way to find me. I'm also on Twitter at Corbly, or X at Corbly Leslie. I also just finished a manuscript for a new book, so that will be coming out this year.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So it's more common. It's a blend of autobiography and cultural and political commentary, specifically related, like I said, kind of some of the. It's titled Progressive Prejudice, so it delves into some of these issues related to prejudices on the political left that we are really. Tend to under-discuss, specifically related to themes of weaponized compassion and the devouring mother.
Outstanding. Well, what's the website one more time?
Sure, lesliecorbly.com. Or you can find my current book on that website, lesliecorbly.com, or on Amazon.
Outstanding. Leslie Corbly, I appreciate you being with us. Thanks for keeping us up to speed on what's going on, and hope to have you back soon.
Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. And amigos, of course, we're going to continue our discussion on everything that's going on in all of the news all across America, plus our conversation with you all, we the people, the American people. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
We do find it sort of rather odd that, there are quite a few people in the bureaucracy who have ostensibly a salary of a few $100,000, but somehow manage to accrue tens of millions of dollars in net worth while they are in that position, which is, what happened to USAID. We're just curious as to where it came from. Maybe they're very good at investing, in which case we should take their investment advice, perhaps. But there seems to be mysteriously they get wealthy. We don't know why. Where does it come from? And I think the reality is that they're getting wealthy at taxpayer expense.
That's Elon Musk, and giving a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek explanation on why they're looking at what they're looking at. Imagine that. We're just going to look at why Nancy Pelosi's making hundreds of millions of dollars, or worth hundreds of millions of dollars, when she makes $174,000 a year. I love the response. I love the snarkiness. I think it's the right way to go. But he did a whole one-on-one with the press, and he didn't do it, as Caroline Levitt suggested before, in the press briefing room. He did it in the Oval Office. Of course, President Trump sitting at the Resolute desk, and Elon Musk and his young son climbing all over him. Really cute little kid. And taking all the questions from the media. We got a little bit more on this. Listen to this.
Mr. Musk, the White House says that you will identify and excuse yourself from any conflicts of interest that you may have. Does that mean that you are, in effect, policing yourself? What are the checks and balances that are in place to ensure that there is accountability and transparency?
Well, we actually are trying to be as transparent as possible. In fact, we post our actions to the DOGE handle on X and to the DOGE website. So all of our actions are maximally transparent. In fact, I don't think there's been, I don't know of a case where an organization has been more transparent than the DOGE organization. So, and the kind of things we're doing are, I think, very, very simple and basic. They're not, what I mentioned, for example, about Treasury, just making sure that payments that go out, taxpayer money that goes out, is categorized correctly, that the payment is explained, that organizations on the do not pay list, which takes a lot to get there, that actually are not paid, which currently they are paid. These are not individual judgment decisions. These are about simply having sensible checks and balances in the system itself to ensure that taxpayer money is spent well. So it's got nothing to do with, like, say, a contract with some company of mine at all.
But if there is a conflict of interest when it comes to you yourself, for instance, you've received billions of dollars in federal contracts when it comes to the Pentagon, for instance, which the president, I know, has directed you to look into.
Yeah.
Are you policing yourself in that? Is there any sort of accountability check and balance in place that would provide any transparency for the American people?
Well, all of our actions are fully public. So if you see anything, you say, like, wait a second, hey, Elon, that seems like maybe that's, there's a conflict there. It's not like people are going to be shy about saying that. They'll say it immediately.
Including you yourself.
Yes. But transparency is what builds trust.
So that is Elon Musk. And again, going at it with the media. I think he is handling it, right? He's handling it. He's doing it. He's answering the questions that are being asked. And I want to know, what do you think? You, the American people, we the people, my amigos, give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. I want to go to Tampa, Florida, streaming the show tonight on richvaldez.com. Let's check in with Eduardo. Go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, good evening, Rich. I'm looking here at a story in Daily Mail. Democratic candidate Governor Laura Kelly blocking the gender surgeries for minors. The state legislator is Republican, so they think they're going to override the veto. So if anybody's in your listening area, please call your congressman to make sure that happens.
All right. Thank you for that. Anything on DOGE and Elon Musk?
Yeah, I think he's doing a great job. I was telling somebody else, what happens when a Democrat president goes in there? You think they're going to be upset that we have a Democrat, Elon Musk? No, hell no. Like, they went into the basement to hide. Remember when they wrote the bills? They went into the basement and hid they didn't have any Republican input. So right back at you, dummies. Yep.
Yeah. And honestly, this is a lot more transparent than anything they've done, even including the January 6th committee, which had only the favorable Republicans, right? But yeah, I think that, the media doesn't know what to do with themselves. They try to hit him with the hard questions. He's not running away. He's there, playing with his little kid, and he's answering the questions. It's almost, Eduardo, to me, it seems like the media is running out of things to attack this administration on, because they realize that every time we attack them, the general public, their viewership, their listenership, their readership, those are the same people that are rooting these guys on.
The oriented criticism than silly criticism about his kid picking his nose. It's pretty childish.
Right, exactly. They're running out of things to point their fingers at. Thanks for the call, brother. I appreciate it. Shout out to you guys in Florida and all of our affiliates like WENG and everybody else out in Florida. And amigos, we're going to take a pause right here. We're going to come right back. The rest of your calls and so much more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
My hands across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez live from Nashville tonight. Shout out to Cumulus Media Westwood One here in Nashville for putting me up for the next couple of days. And I want to revisit something that happened last night on CNN. Anderson Cooper was speaking with Chris Sununu from New Hampshire about what's going on with FEMA. And he calls him something that rhymes with prick. Listen to this.
If we have to go to Congress, we'll go to Congress.
Right, but
we'll show where
some of the details that have come out, like the $59 million spent on luxury hotels, it's actually not.
You're talking about the FEMA money that was abused for migrants? That was
Yeah.
FEMA money for migrants, that's okay now?
No, I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not saying it's okay. Don't put words in my mouth.
So would you stop that? Would you stop that process?
Don't be the portrayal. What I'm saying is the portrayal by him is just not factually accurate.
He's running out of patience here. I know that feeling, Anderson. I do. I oftentimes feel like telling people to not be that either. But that's how it is. The funny thing here is Sununu's hitting it out of the park, right? He's 100% right. This is not disaster relief, and this is not what's going on, and this is not, federal emergency management territory, at least in my opinion, right? You can try to make anything a federal emergency management issue if you say, oh, my gosh, we got all these people that came from another country and they're starving and they're this and they're that. Listen, you know whose job that is, in my opinion? Your fellow man and principally the church. Now, I'm going to make some statements. You may think that these are, I don't know, maybe provocative statements, maybe not. But I saw a video on one of the social media. And it's a video of a church, and it's one of these churches that are very left-wing, progressive type of churches that runs a bunch of different ministries that serve different people in their community. And I was looking at some of the comments in the video, and many of these comments are coming from, people on right of center. And they were taking exception in the video that somebody's doing like an ambush-style report, on the pastor of this church or the leader of the church who's entering a car outside of the church. Reverend, I forget her name. And she's going in the car and she's with, someone from the church, I would presume, a parishioner perhaps, a volunteer. And the journalist is asking a question. And he's like, hey, are you guys supporting illegal immigrants, or are you okay with, breaking immigration laws or whatever, along the lines of those types of questions? And she kind of smiles and keeps walking. The gentleman that she's with says, we're in the middle of something, excuse me. And he says, well, I don't care what you're in the middle of. I want to ask you questions. And that's his job, and that's fine. And they get into, a little bit of, I think the colleague of the journalist is now, taking video. And he videos the car they're getting in, and he takes video of the license plate. The guy that's opening the door for the reverend, he says, don't do that. And the guy says, I'm doing it. What are you going to do? And then he says, you MFer. And they're getting into a little, back and forth. And ultimately, the critique from the journalist and his videographer partner was with respect to this church adhering to Marxism. Being, a communist sympathizing church. And again, you know me, I hate all the commies. Well, at least the communist ideology, right? I can't say I hate all the commies. I don't know all the commies. But what I set the stage on this story to say this. Everybody was so upset about, they were saying, churches shouldn't get tax-exempt status. If they're going to get in the business of this and that or harboring illegal aliens, they should all go to jail, this, that, and the third. And I'm thinking to myself, look, you know me. I'm with Tom Homan, right? We've had Homan on this show, I don't know, half a dozen times or more. Big supporter of President Trump's and all those policies. But I have to say this. If it's not the job of the church to help a man or a woman who was trafficked into this country, or even a young person, right, a 14-year-old for slave labor or for sex work, if it's not the job of the church to help this person who's in this country scared, figuring out what their next move is going to be, whose job is it? It's not the government's. It's got to be the local church. So I don't critique the church, even if it's a communist sympathizing church. But we can continue that discussion because I think it's a deep one. Anyway, folks, hasta la próxima. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Wednesday night edition of the program. We're live, we're national, happy to speak with each and every one of you. Our phone number is 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337, and we're live in Nashville tonight. Big shout out to our partners here at Cumulus Media, Westwood One, in Nashville, Music City. Beautiful, beautiful studio that they've provided here. Very happy to be here. And I want to get into some of the news before we jump into our conversation on the transnational criminal syndicate known as Tren de Aragua and get an update on that. I want to give you a little bit of, what's going on here. Because right now, we talked about something called NewsGuard about, 6-8 months ago, maybe even a year ago. And NewsGuard was this thing that in part was funded by State Department funds. It's a censorship operation. And it's been kind of dealt with and done away with in most places. But up until recently, their biggest user was Microsoft. Well, Microsoft is now ditching the U.S. aid-funded NewsGuard, which is fantastic news, because this type of censorship is, I think, part of the problem. Looking at this piece here, Microsoft has dropped the NewsGuard left-wing fact-checking organization they partnered with that helped the advertising industry justify blacklists for independent and conservative media sites like Zero Hedge, who's reporting this. The move came after Senator Ted Cruz began investigating Microsoft for funding the online quote-unquote media literacy censorship tool created by NewsGuard to help guide learners of all ages, what they say is learners of all ages, through the overwhelming landscape of online news and information. So now we come to find out that NewsGuard was funded by USAID. Good old USAID, always in the mix. You can't make this stuff up. I mean, it's so interconnected, this web of deceit. In response to, from Microsoft, of course, doing all that, they claimed that their support of NewsGuard was limited to a one-time donation in 2018 and said it asked NewsGuard to remove a claim on their website that read, quote, NewsGuard's media literacy programs are made possible thanks to generous support from Microsoft. That's great, huh? I would hate that, too, if I was involved in a censorship operation. And they were saying, we want to get that off our website. I get it. Sometimes, people will say, if you said something and it's in the public domain, they'll say, hey, look, so-and-so said this. But it is interesting, nonetheless, that this is, they're saying, look, I don't want you to, please don't give me any, don't say that we listen to you. Don't say that you use our product, blah, 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 blah. Let me also share with you something that happened a little while ago. We now have 75,000 workers that have taken President Trump's buyout to leave the federal government. 75,000 workers, according to the Office of Personnel Management, have accepted the offer. And this is, again, part of the Trump administration's push to reduce the federal workforce. Senior administration official confirmed the figure in the hours after the court rejected a bid by the unions to quash the program. The court ruling has allowed the government to officially close what was known as the Fork in the Road program. The buyout offered federal workers 8 months of pay and benefits for those who wish to leave government as President Trump forges ahead with a return to office mandate. So anyway, here's a quote. OPM is pleased that the court has rejected a desperate effort to strike down the deferred resignation program, the agency said earlier today. Kudos to El Trompito on that one. 75,000 down, plenty more to go. And let me see. There was something else I wanted to get to. Oh, yeah. A little bit on this, what's going on with these gangs, right? Tren de Aragua. Well, you've got the United States Attorney for the Middle District of Tennessee, right here where I am in Tennessee, in a news conference today, announced the arrest of 8 Venezuelan nationals for multiple crimes, including sex trafficking. Listen to this.
The indictment alleges that all 8 of the defendants conspired to transport women from South America into the United States and compelled those women to engage in prostitution. We allege that this trafficking was all a part of a scheme to promote an unlawful prostitution enterprise here in the Middle District of Tennessee. 3 defendants are also charged with conspiring to commit sex trafficking of these vulnerable victims by using force, fraud, and coercion to compel their participation in illegal commercial sex acts. This was all done for the profit of these defendants. The indictment also charges 1 defendant with unlawful possession of firearms by an illegal alien.
Now, I'll tell you, the big takeaway there for me was illegal commercial sex acts. It almost sounded as if there are legal commercial sex acts. I didn't know sex acts could be commercial and be legal. Maybe I'm wrong. I probably picked up on the wrong thing there. But clearly, this is, again, the transnational criminal syndicate known as Tren de Aragua from Venezuela doing what they do best, bad things. So I want to jump into that conversation and really get into it because President Trump is now, allied with President Nayib Bukele of El Salvador. He is working with the United States Coast Guard and ICE and ERO and all of these groups within Immigration and Border Patrol to get the worst of the worst into Gitmo, right? The United States military base in Guantanamo Bay. Very, very aggressive actions to handle a very, very aggressive problem. And lots of scrutiny, lots of critique. But I want to know, is it working? How effective has it been? Well, we're going to get an update on that from an expert on this transnational criminal syndicate known as Tren de Aragua. When we come back, don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Congratulations on just an amazing show. I know you've worked so hard in the industry, and nobody deserves it more than you do. So I'm happy to see you really succeeding here. It's awesome.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
For 2 of the charged defendants, the indictment alleges that they used their affiliation with the notorious Venezuelan street gang Tren de Aragua, otherwise known as TDA, to intimidate the victims into continuing to commit commercial sex acts. The Department of Justice is fully committed to the eradication of these transnational criminal organizations. And we will continually and aggressively pursue justice for the victims of these gangs and others.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez live with you till 1 a.m. in most areas, midnight in others. And Tren de Aragua, right? This is the notorious Venezuelan gang that's been wreaking havoc all over the place. Tren de Aragua, TDA, as they're referred to by the United States Attorney here in Tennessee. And I want to get to the bottom of this because human trafficking, sex trafficking, this is what they specialize in. We heard about them in Colorado. We heard about them in New York City at the Roosevelt Hotel. And now we're hearing about them in Tennessee, of all places. Well, I happen to be in Tennessee, and I want to get to the bottom of it with Executive Director of the Center for a Secure and Free Society, Joseph Humeyer. Welcome back, my man.
Thank you, Rich. Always a pleasure to be on.
Likewise, my man. Good to talk to you. So So tell me, are things getting better or are they getting worse? Are we uncovering more of Tren de Aragua and what they're up to? Are we discovering that they're more entrenched than we thought they were? Or are we scratching the surface but actually getting somewhere in deporting these guys? Your thoughts?
So undoubtedly we're getting things better because we're actually taking the fight to Tren de Aragua. And I think in the previous years, there was very little done about the Tren de Aragua. In fact, it's important to remind the audience that the Tren de Aragua, unlike MS-13 or the Mexican cartels, is uniquely a Biden administration phenomenon because they did not exist prior to 2021 inside the United States. They were around all other countries in Latin America, but they weren't in the United States. They first started appearing around 21, 22, and they really exploded in 23 and 24. And so when President Trump comes into office, he basically inherits this as a major problem. But what you're seeing now is you're seeing an effort to basically clamp down and dismantle the Tren de Aragua, and that has many components. It has a component of intelligence and identifying them and locating them. It has a component of basically, targeting and capturing them, and it has a component of deporting them. And the truth is, to be able to make all that work very seamlessly, the third component, the deportation, was essential. And so that goes beyond the efforts of the border authorities. That has to go into diplomatic circles and in our foreign policy. And we had a very successful visit by the presidential envoy, Rick Grenell, to Venezuela to be able to start the deportation flights. And my understanding is those flights started earlier this week. And that's going to make a big difference because now the border authorities, law enforcement, they can go after TDA even more aggressively because they have somewhere for them to deport. I mean, all the ICE people that I know would constantly complain. They go, what's the point of arresting these guys because we can't get them out of this country because there's nowhere to send them? Well, they have an answer now. And then there's, other options too. There's Guantanamo, Guantanamo Bay, where a few of them are being sent. And then there are potentially going to be other options that are going to come online soon enough. So the bottom line is I think we're taking the fight to them. Things are going good. But you have to understand that TDA has been entrenched here for a little while, so they're going to resist. So it's not going to go perfect.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. Folks, we're on with Joseph Humeyer, Executive Director of the Center for a Secure Free Society. Now, Joseph, tell us about this particular case, if you can, if you know about it, of what's going on in Tennessee, because I wasn't really up to speed on this gang being in Tennessee until a couple of months ago. We heard a report on that, so I'm glad that they're catching them, but how much are they spreading?
No, so that's the thing. And this was I would say pretty much from July, August of last year to the end of the year and into the new year. We literally saw an exponential growth of Tren de Aragua in terms of covering geographic territory. I mean, every month they were in a different state, in more states. I mean, I remember back then it was 6 states in June or July of last year confirmed TDA. And when I say confirmed, they arrested people in those states for committing crimes in those states. And then, a few months later, it was 20 states. And Tennessee was one of the latest. I remember that served the reports. The first reports I saw of Tren de Aragua operating inside Tennessee was in November of last year. In fact, it was, I think, either right before, I think it was right before the election. And then we started seeing some of that get exposed on the media right after the election. And what we began to see was that they were operating in multiple cities inside Tennessee. And one of the things that Tren de Aragua tends to do is when they commit a crime in one state, they immediately flee to another state, not just for refuge, but also to expand their operations. So in particular, the folks that were in Tennessee, we believe that they were leaving from Florida. So they went from Florida to Tennessee after they had been committing crimes in Florida and moved up to basically expand their operation and to evade authorities in Florida.
Wow. Very interesting stuff. Now, what is the stronghold for Tren de Aragua at this point?
Stronghold in the sense of where geographically?
I guess their main base of operations, where are they strongest?
Well, I mean, obviously they're based out of Venezuela, so they always have, even... No,
I meant in the U.S., though.
And so I would put attention to 3 places. There's probably more, but I would put attention to New York. I think New York, there's been a tremendous expansion of Tren de Aragua, and that they're, you mentioned the Roosevelt Hotel, but they're really all over New York City, and they're starting to spread into surrounding territories in Connecticut and New Jersey. But I think that's a hub. I think I would probably say Chicago, Illinois, is a place where we've seen a lot of Tren de Aragua members. It's one of the first reports that came about TDA was reported out of Chicago. And in Chicago, they've been basically consolidating by building alliances with other gangs to basically take over the territory of rival gangs, particularly the African American gangs in the south side of Chicago. And I think that's impending a gang turf war, which would be very violent if it happens. And then I would say it's kind of hard to say like so many places that they're at, but Texas has always been kind of like ground zero because of the border. But I think that's going to probably shift, and I would probably pay more attention to places like Colorado and Tennessee. And the common denominator on all that stuff is that they tend to go where they're sanctuary cities. And sanctuary cities for them are basically a refuge for them to be able to hide out and try to use legal mechanisms and NGOs and all kinds of techniques to basically evade authorities and not be able to get captured and arrested. So that would mention those cities prominently as some of the main areas where they're operating.
Folks, we're on with Joseph Humeyer, Executive Director of the Center for a Secure, Free Society. Now, Joseph Humeyer, I love what you're telling me that, we're gaining on them, we're getting them. But the other side of that coin is you're telling me they're expanding in New York, they're spilling over into Connecticut, New Jersey, the tri-state area. They're here in Tennessee, they're leaving Florida. Do we have a handle on containing this gang, or are we just kind of keeping up?
Well, I mean, I think we're playing catch up, to be honest with you, because there wasn't a lot done last year. And so this problem's been festering for close to 2 years now, maybe a little more even. And it's been bubbling up. And really, like I said, the last 6 months have been horrible in terms of all the crimes that have been committed and the expansion that TDA has had throughout the United States. So we're playing catch up. But the biggest component to make that catch up feasible was the deportation flights. We needed to have place. I mean, not just TDA in general. Because there was nowhere to deport Venezuelans, there was thousands of Venezuelans that had removal orders from judges, but they were occupying ICE units and beds, and they had nowhere to send them to. So that was the biggest first immediate hurdle that I believe the Trump administration had to cross. And thanks to the diplomatic work of places like Rick Gannell and others, that they were able to jump that hurdle. And I think then now we're going to see the increase. Just in the last 3 weeks, I guess, that President Trump's been in office, we've had almost half as many arrests as the entire Biden administration on TDA. So, the entire Biden administration might have arrested, I'm using ballpark figures, about 500 or so TDA members in the last year and a half. And the Trump administration, in a matter of 3 weeks, has arrested more than 200, almost 250 TDA members. And so that just shows you that we're going to get there. Now, people always ask me how many TDA members are in the U.S. We don't know that number with any certainty. But I would venture to guess a low bar would be about 1,000, and there's estimated to be about 6,000 TDA members overall. So about a sixth of that's in the United States, meaning that they've made their presence here in the U.S. a priority. Wow.
Folks, we're on with Joseph Humeyer. We're going to continue this conversation straight ahead. I want to know, what are we going to do with these people? Of course, Maduro says, I don't want them. Then he says, all right, I'll take them. Well, we're going to get into that. Where do we put the baddest of the bad? Folks, we're coming right back with Joseph Humeyer and me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
Rich Valdez, the day that you welcome me to your show is a happy day for me. And I hope that America appreciates what you're doing because you're fighting a good fight.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The ACLU is suing the Trump administration, essentially asking a federal judge to order them to restore access not only to Gitmo detainees, but also to immediately restore video and phone conferencing access to them. Interestingly, it is being filed on behalf of 3 family members who have loved ones who are being currently detained in Gitmo. They say that, of course, if they were being housed here in U.S. soil, they'd, of course, have access to legal counsel. But now that they've been sent to this remote and, of course, notorious location, they're essentially cut off from that that. Lawyers are saying that there's absolutely no way that there's a third party. There's no third party right there in Gitmo to be able to kind of verify what conditions people are being held in and the reasons, of course, that they're being sent to Guantanamo Bay.
That is a report from Armando Garcia, ABC News. And again, just a reminder, folks, we're going to get to your calls, open phones across America, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And as you just heard in that report, the ACLU is suing the Trump administration over what's going on in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Before the break, I posited the question to our guest, Joseph Humeyer, Executive Director of the Center for a Secure Free Society. What do we do with these people, these dangerous, violent Venezuelan criminals that are in the United States? If we can't put them in Gitmo and they won't take them back, what do we do? Well, I think Gitmo is going to be the answer, but let's go to Joseph Humeyer. Your thoughts, sir?
Well, I think there's a couple of solutions that are being worked out right now by U.S. foreign policy diplomatic circles. Looking at other countries to essentially house some of these. I know there's an offer made by Salvador. They have a big maximum security prison that they use to incarcerate MS-13 gang members. So there's a potential that could be maybe an option down the line.
Let me ask you about that one, because you know about this more than I do. Joseph, when I've seen what Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador, has done with his country, it's nothing short of impressive. This is, again, they were the biggest, baddest gang on the block before Tren de Aragua came around, right? But when you see these videos, these guys look like they're in a call to prayer. It's because they can't stand up. Like it's brutal, the conditions in these places. Would that be constitutional? Wouldn't that constitute cruel and unusual punishment? Your thoughts?
I mean, I'm sure there's human rights organizations that are going to make a fuss, but these same human rights organizations that complain about that aren't complaining at all when MS-13 was killing people. And El Salvador was one of the highest homicide rates in the world. So, I mean, kind of pick your battles there. But fundamentally, I think that if you're like a TDA gang leader, you're not used to that kind of treatment in prisons because the prisons that you served in Venezuela were like resorts. Yeah, they ran the prison. They had baseball fields. They had nightclubs. They had restaurants. And this kind of goes to like this philosophy that the Venezuela government used, but I think it's pervasive in other governments in Latin America, of rehabilitation over punishment. Meaning that they were looking to rehabilitate the criminals and not necessarily punish them for the crimes that they've committed. For example, in Mexico, the former president used to call abrazos no balazos, which means hugs, not bullets, right? And in Colombia, the current president has talked about we want to reincorporate the drug traffickers into society. And so this is kind of this notion of not punishing people for their crimes. And what that sets up is a perverse incentive for criminals to commit more crimes. And then what Salvador did was they reversed that. They said, no, we're going to focus on the punishment. And we're going to make sure that people that commit crimes, especially the most horrendous crimes committed by mega gangs like the MS-13, are going to be punished to the fullest maximum extent of the law. So that's a maximum security prison. And my understanding is the criminals that mostly go to that prison are homicide, rape, human trafficking, like the really most notorious crimes. Like if you're, for, I don't know, just a tax evasion or something, you're not going to go to that prison is what I understand, right? But for TDA from the U.S., right, if you're thinking about, you much rather serve in a U.S. prison than go to that prison if that becomes an option,
Yeah, me too. Right. So that's one of the options you were saying. What are some of the other options you're seeing and hearing from your diplomatic sources?
Well, I think, there are other options I probably can't get into right now, but I think fundamentally the number one, and this is, some people don't like to hear this, but it's Venezuela, And I know the criticism that's, well, if they go to Venezuela, they're just going to regroup and come back. Well, maybe, but they're not going to come back to an open border. That's really what they were coming back to during the Biden administration. That's going to not be the case this time. And number two is, President Trump's job isn't to clean up all the countries with Tren de Aragua. It's really to clean up America from Tren de Aragua, and they are Venezuelan. So if we can't get them all of them into Gitmo or into other countries, I think for right now, Venezuela is receiving charter flights and they're going to go back there. That doesn't mean that the TDA problem is resolved, but at least we're getting them outside of the U.S. American cities and prison centers. I've been very strong advocating that we should not have them in our prison system because these guys know how to abuse and manipulate the prison systems to be able to create models and governance centers so they end up running the gangs. Basically, yeah.
Very, very interesting stuff. Now, what's next? Should we be on the lookout for another transnational criminal organization as we're quashing the Tren de Aragua, or do we chalk this one up as a victory as we're starting to close in on them?
Well, I think there's two things. I think I'll focus both on the positive and then potentially, some of the challenges that we'll have. Right. On the positive side, I think you're going to expect to see a lot more arrests. I think ICE is specifically targeting Tren de Aragua. They have them on the high priority list. I think you're going to now we got other people confirmed, like the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kirsten Noem, the Attorney General Pam Bondi. Now you got the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, just got confirmed yesterday. And so we have now kind of the elements to have a whole of government. We're really missing the FBI director, Kash Patel, to get confirmed because the FBI has a big role in TDA as well. And once you have this whole of government approach, I think you're going to start to see the rest start to skyrocket on TDA members. So that's the positive. What's the negative? The negative is, every reaction has an equal and opposite reaction, so we're going to expect the TDA to push back. And this is the big question. We started to see a glimpse of this at the raid that they had in Aurora, Colorado. They got leaked to the TDA members, and then when the 400 agents went to go raid the apartment complex, there were no TDA members to be found. So that to me was indicative of, has the TDA already entrenched itself in specific cities or locations to where they've now created what we call adaptive agents. They penetrated political circles, they penetrated media entities, they penetrated civil society, because that's what they did in Venezuela and throughout South America. And that makes them very hard to capture. And that's why TDA is an organized crime group and really is a terrorist group, because they use all these tactics to their advantage. So I think we're going to start to see some resistance. Don't be surprised to see some like TDA defenders coming out in legal circles and in media circles to start to. And I already see one narrative being projected, which is the Trump administration's over exaggerating the TDA threat. That was already existed since the campaign. But I think those voices are going to start to get louder, and all of that obviously always benefits TDA.
Outstanding analysis, as always. Joseph Humeyer, Executive Director at the Center for a Secure, Free Society. Joseph, let everybody know how to keep in touch with you, how to follow you, and keep up to speed with all the work you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow me mostly on social media, whether it's X or Instagram or any of the other ones, on at JM Humeyer, which is my name, and then the center is at Secure Free Society or Secure Free SOC. And I should mention that we actually have something that we just launched late last year, and we're about to put out the latest update called the TDA Activity Monitor. So it's called TDA Activity Monitor. You just search for it on our website. And what you find is an accurate accounting of TDA's presence throughout the United States based on media reports and law enforcement reports about their arrests. So we're going to have that. Right now it only shows updated till the end of last year. But we're going to have next week, the latest update for 2025.
Outstanding work. Joseph Humeyer, Executive Director for the Center for a Secure, Free Society. Thanks for being here, brother. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I appreciate it. Godspeed.
Thank you, Rich. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Likewise. And amigos, your calls and more are coming up. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about DOGE. I want to talk about whatever's on your mind. Open phones across America, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Familia, we continue our conversation again live and national, 833-482-5337, Valdez. Let's hit the phones. I want to go to Sam, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, calling us on America's oldest radio station still in use, KDKA. Sam, go right ahead.
Mr. Valdez, good evening, and thank you very much for taking my call.
My pleasure. Thank you, sir.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about President Trump's promises made, promises kept. Excuse me, a summer afternoon in July, a little bit before President Trump would take the stage, he made a promise to a grieving mother, Mark Fogel's mother, that he would do everything in his power if he was elected to get him home. And the events that transpired later in that day, hard to imagine. Corey Comparator lost his life. Someone very close to me was also wounded by the gunfire.
I'm sorry.
Trump was also wounded. Thank you very much. But anyway, he never forgot that promise that he made to Mark Fogel's mother. And when he got into office, not even 1 month into being a president of the United States, he kept his promise to that mother and got her son home. I just can't express the joy that the Pittsburgh community, all of us have, regardless of party. Democrats and Republicans are celebrating tonight. We're all toasting Iron Cities to President Trump and to the Democratic congressmen and Republican congressmen that all work to get him home. And it's just an incredible feeling. It feels better than Christmas morning, honestly. And votes really do have an impact on people's lives, and this is very firsthand that it can be very positive. So I just wanted to express my gratitude to President Trump.
Yeah, really an amazing comment, Sam. And I couldn't have said that any better. I think you're 100% right. It is it's a testament to who Trump is as a man. It's just doing the right thing as the American president. It's great on all fronts, honestly. And I'm glad this guy's home and he's in decent shape, right? We saw some of the hostages coming back that were in Hamas custody, and they're not in great shape. And, grateful that they're alive, but, man, it was rough. And it just makes you think. We have so much to be thankful for, and we were really on the wrong track, and, man, how we've righted that wrong. So thank you for your really, really eloquent comment. I appreciate it. Sam in Pittsburgh, Wendy Bell Country, KDKA. Thank you, my brother. I appreciate it. Always good to hear from you and everybody out there in that part of the world. And I want to continue. I want to go to Kalispell, Montana. KOFI. Let's check in with our buddy Lance. Lance, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Good evening, sir. Hey, initially I was going to throw a couple logs on the fire against all these knuckleheads talking about the constitutional crisis, but I actually want to withdraw that, change horses in midstream, and visit with you a little bit. We had 3 Tren de Aragua mid-level operatives actually arrested on just one of our reservations here in Montana just recently.
Oh, wow. And
of a population of less than 1.3 million people. Wow. And it's been suggested that they have ties to a lot of the Tren de Aragua that came out of Aurora, Colorado.
Like what our guest was just saying, that they're spreading. They go from one state to the next.
Yep. And it's, in terms of driving here in Montana, it's just a short hop down the road to get to Aurora, really, even from where I live. But to have 3 mid-level associates arrested on one of our 7 First Nations people properties, reservations,
it raises a lot of questions, right? What are they doing there? Were they invited? Are they moving in? What the story is? And let me tell you, I try to stay plugged in on the news, but if somebody were to ask me, where do you think these people are growing? All right, where do you think they're recruiting? I would have said New York City, probably Chicago, bigger urban centers. I would never have guessed, Kalispell, Montana, Aurora, Colorado. These would not have been my top choices. But yet, here we are, Nashville, Tennessee. None of these things would have been what I was thinking. But yet, here we have them, right? You see activity in Tennessee. You see it in Montana. You're seeing it in Colorado, and it's definitely not good, right? I mean, that's, to put it very bluntly and very plainly, this is not good, but it is good that we see that they're getting arrested, and it's good that we're making the effort to quash them. And I think that's all the American people expect, is that if we have a problem, we're going to attack the problem, not exacerbate the problem like Joe El Baboso Biden and Kamala Harris did by, overseeing this open border, which in my opinion, and I've said it many times, is likely the largest criminal operation we've ever seen of human smuggling and human trafficking in American history. So, Lance, thank you for that update. I appreciate it. Folks, we're coming right back. We're going to wrap up with open phones across America. We've got more calls from Virginia and elsewhere. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
So is Israel going to resume their military operation in the Gaza Strip to eradicate Hamas? I've got a live report. Somebody on the ground in Israel is going to be calling us. Editor-in-chief of the Jewish News Syndicate will be live with me in the next hour. Hopefully your radio station carries this program live and carries the third hour. If not, you better get on the horn with that station's program director and let them know, like back in the day, on our MTV, we want our Rich Valdez, and we want that third hour. Anyway, I want to go to the phones, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. Let us go to Steve calling us from Virginia on WMAL. Go for it.
Hey, Rich, I just started listening to you about a month ago, and you have a very interesting show.
Thank you.
I just thought this may be of some interest to you. I dropped off an old washing machine at Habitat Restore, and I went in and just trying to, shop around while I was there. And I've been dropping stuff off there for the last 8 to 10 years, and recognized one of the guys that's been there for a few years, and walked over to him and said, "Hey, what's going on? How things going?" He says, "Man, business is really slow." I said, "Really? What's going on?" He said, "Well, ever since Trump directed all the federal workers back into the office, business has been slow." I thought that was pretty interesting.
That is funny. This is the local Habitat for Humanity office?
Right. Well, I'm in Fairfax, Virginia, so there's probably, a half a dozen within about a 15-mile radius of me. So I just thought, now we know what the federal workers been doing, working from home during the week.
Working from home, building homes with Jimmy Carter. That's crazy. That's very interesting, man. Thank you for the update, and thanks for tuning into the show. I appreciate it. Always looking to grow our listenership, and I appreciate you, Steve. Godspeed to you, my man. Shout out to everybody in Fairfax, and, of course, everybody on our affiliate in D.C., WMAL. All right, amigos, we will continue. We've got Jonathan Tobin joining us live from Israel with a report on what's going on in that part of the world. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy to be here. This is the Wednesday night edition of the program. We're live, we are national, and we happen to be in Nashville, Tennessee tonight, not New York area. We're in Nashville, Music City to be exact, at the Cumulus Radio Cluster here. There's a bunch of amazing stations here. We've got 92Q and Titan, the sports channel, as well as WTN, the big talker here. Just an amazing amazing studio space. Big shout out to Mike Buckner, the chief engineer here, for being so hospitable and making this all possible while I'm here. I'm here in Tennessee tonight and for the next day or two to celebrate my nephew who is graduating from the Tennessee State Police. He's, once, he does his ceremony and whatnot, he'll be a trooper, Tennessee State Trooper, part of the Highway Patrol, and incredibly proud of him we are. Anyway, lots of news to discuss tonight. A live report from Israel coming up in a little bit, but lots going on the international front. You've got Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has now retaliated. He says, you guys want to put tariffs on us? Well, we'll put tariffs on you. I don't think this is the best idea for him because, as we've discussed with economists and others, this is not a trade war that Canada likely wins. But listen to Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Check this one out.
I am announcing Canada will be responding to the U.S. trade action with 25% tariffs against $155 billion worth of American goods.
Now, of course, President Trump, who had announced 25% tariffs on Canada, says, look, they can't do it forever. Listen to this.
We don't need their milk. We got a lot of milk. We need their cars. They make 20% of our cars. We don't need that. I'd rather make them in Detroit. We don't need their lumber. We have massive fields of lumber. We basically protect Canada. I love the Canadian people. They're great. But we're spending hundreds of billions a year to protect it, doing it because of habit. And we're doing it because we like our neighbors, and we've been good neighbors. But we can't do it forever.
Now, of course, folks in government in Canada, they're saying, look, we've got to hit back the United States hard. They're supporting Justin Trudeau. Doug Ford, he's the premier of Ontario. Listen to this.
Dollar for dollar, tariff for tariff. The federal government has my full support to hit back and hit back hard.
Well, I don't know how long that lasted because now the Canadians have decided to move their food production here to the United States. Check this out.
Canadian food companies are moving production to the U.S. Trump's 25% tariffs on Canadian imports, and Canadian food companies say that they can't afford to stay. Flourish Pancakes and Midday Squares, which are two of Canada's fastest-growing food startups, were set to expand their operations here. But with U.S. sales making up most of their growth, they're now looking at Ohio, Wisconsin, and Missouri instead.
Now, in addition to what's happening in Canada, with Canada, all that tough talk, all that rhetoric, but yet still coming to the United States at the invitation of President Trump, El Trumpito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th president of these United States, you've got other things that are happening all over the world, right? Earlier we talked about Mark Fogel being released by Russia. Now you've got Belarus. Belarus has also released some hostages. You got Adam Boehler, the U.S. envoy for hostages, making this announcement.
One is a U.S. citizen that wants to remain private at this point, so we'll respect that. We have another person that is actually a well-known journalist that was working at Radio Liberty.
Their nationality is?
They are, I believe they're Belarusian. Okay. And then there's a third, I'm not sure nationality, but not American. I mean, he's made bringing Americans home a top priority, and people respond to that.
Well, I think lots of people are responding to all the action we're seeing coming from President Trump and this administration going out there and hitting the ground running, engines roaring on every cylinder. Fantastic. Really, really is fantastic to see what's going on in America. And This is why I love doing this program. I love being with you guys live every night, because as things are happening throughout the day, we give you an update on what happened. As things are breaking at night, we try to keep you up to speed on everything that's breaking news in the evening time. And it to me, it's critical. It's part of the national discourse, right? It's what we're doing. It's literally I envision this, right? I'm sitting in a radio studio in front of a console with a microphone in my face, and I can't see anybody, right? But I can reach you, and you can reach me, right? 833-482-5337, and we can have this dialogue, and we can have it in Hawaii. Everybody listening in Hawaii right now, it's drive time over there. I'm in the central time zone right now. I'm normally in the eastern time zone. We air on KVTA and a bunch of stations in California and all over the West Coast in Oregon and Washington, and it gives us a unique opportunity to have this late-night national town hall conversation. Open phones across America, as Larry King and Jim Bohannon used to say. But it all happens because of the magic of radio, right? We get to use the theater of the mind. We get to envision a lot of what we're hearing. Part of what I love most is meeting people and them having no idea who I am. And sometimes they recognize my voice and they go, "Oh, you're Rich Valdez," right? And you know that you can't get that in TV. People know what you look like in TV. They know your character, your personality, but they don't really get to know you as a person the way people get to know people on radio, because you spend so much more time with people on radio, right? We have longer segments, longer shows. Anyway, I say all of that to say radio to me is an important format, not to poo-poo any of the others, because the others are great, but it's just pretty cool, right? Pretty cool. I do a weekly commentary on Newsmax TV. They're all over the place. Huge network, right? Top 5 in the country, oftentimes competing with CNN. And sometimes people say, "Hey, I saw you on Newsmax." But I got to tell you, hearing that pales in comparison to the amount of times I meet someone, they hear my voice and they go, "Oh, I know you from the radio." And that to me is amazing, that you can just know someone by their voice. I literally got introduced to somebody not too long ago. I think I might have shared this on the radio. He works in the FBI in Washington, and during one of the inaugural events, and the person was introducing us, saying, "Hey, this is so-and-so," and he tells me, "You're Rich Valdez." I was like, "Yes, I am. I always have been." And he's like, No, I know you. I'm from Jersey, and I used to listen to you on local radio in New York, and now I listen to you on local radio in D.C. And I thought, man, that's so cool. And he didn't realize it until I said, "Hi, I'm Rich." And he recognized my voice. So the power of radio is what I'm talking about. And I love the power of radio, and I'm so grateful to be here with you guys, because to me, this is important stuff. So anyway, I want to talk about radio a little bit, because not everybody gets to hear this program. Not everybody gets good reception. And if you struggle with getting good reception in your home, there's a company called C. Crane, and they make this internet radio, which I think is a great solution. And the product that they make is called the CC. They have several, and I have several of them, but the CC Wi-Fi number 3, right? CC Wi-Fi 3 internet radio, I think, is the solution for your problem if you have an issue getting this show or any other, clearly. Here's why it's so special. First of all, you connect the CC Wi-Fi 3 to the internet, and then you're ready to tune into like 30,000 radio stations all across the world, including stations carrying my show. No static, no fade, perfect. Now, they use something called voice-focused audio. This surpasses anything that you could get on a smartphone or a smart speaker, anything on the market. This is really top-notch stuff. And they also don't need any app, right? You don't have to sign into an app. You don't have to worry about additional monthly fees or the microphone being on like you have to worry about your phone. None of that. No eavesdropping, no pop-up ads. This is a radio. It also comes with a full-size remote control. So guess what? It's like channel surfing, right? You get to find whatever you want while you're sitting in your favorite easy chair. This stuff hasn't ever been simpler. If you want to use it to hear your favorite music, it doubles as a Bluetooth speaker. So you got that. You could even listen to podcasts of this show. Now, all you got to do to order this is just give them a call. If you want the number, I'll give it to you. It's 800-522-8863. 800-522-8863. You can go online. You can order it. Again, the model number, CC Wi-Fi 3 from C. Crane, or just go to their website. I'll give it to you. I'll even spell it out for you. It's ccrane.com/rich. Use my name. This way you get all the discounts. C. Crane. That's CCRANE.com/rich, RICH. And when you use my name, Rich, code Rich at checkout, you're going to save 10% on any orders that are over $75. And it's also available on Amazon. So make sure you use the code there as well. I want you to do that when you get a chance. Go to ccrane.com/rich, and I'll be right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I think it's the single craziest peace initiative I've ever heard. It's clearly not thought out. It was not vetted by experts. It was not run through the countries we're expecting to take these Palestinians, 2 million people plus. It's not really a plan, Anderson. It's a riff. And it seems to change every single day. And I don't see how it's going to be implemented. I don't see who's going to transfer these people. I don't see how they're going to go voluntarily. America, we are told, is not going to send any troops or pay any cost. It's just crazy. It's hard to take seriously, except we're dealing with people's lives, and we're dealing with American allies in the Arab world who could be easily destabilized by it.
That's Thomas Friedman from the New York Times having a conversation with Anderson Cooper on CNN, sharing his thoughts. And, of course, this is in reaction to President Trump saying the United States is going to occupy Gaza. He says, we're going to own it. We're going to own it, and we're going to make it great, an economic powerhouse. And this is very controversial, and this comes, of course, after we heard the news that if the hostages are not released by Saturday, that all hell will break loose. So I want to first tackle this idea that Friedman is criticizing here, that it's an unrealistic plan to have the United States, secure or manage Gaza without any financial investment. And I want to have that conversation with Jonathan Tobin, editor-in-chief of the Jewish News Syndicate. He's a senior contributor over at The Federalist, and he's our guest right now. Jonathan Tobin, welcome back.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
My pleasure. So a lot of people are, some are taking umbrage. Others think that it's just hyperbole. Some think it's the best idea they've ever heard when we hear President Trump say that the United States should be in charge of Gaza. Your thoughts?
Well, Tom Friedman and the rest of the U.S. foreign policy establishment are right when they say it's hard to see how exactly this is pulled off, how we get from where we are now to this future when Gaza, the Palestinian Arabs have been taken out of Gaza, and then it's reconstructed and turned into, a beach resort or something productive. They're right. I don't see exactly how it happens, but my response to that is that Friedman and the rest of the establishment that have been peddling this idea that it must be a Palestinian state there, and that you must empower these people that have refused every peace offer for the last 75 years plus, and give them on a silver platter the ability to destabilize the region as well as to continue their war against the existence of the one Jewish state on the planet, that is actually much less realistic than what Trump is talking about. In fact, It's crazy because it has been tried over and over and over again, and always leads to disaster. So I'm not really interested in these sort of humphering around, that it's not realistic, it's crazy, it's riffing. Friedman and the rest of his crowd have been riffing for decades, and everybody's been listening to them. And president after president, the international community have all tried what they think should happen, and what they want to happen is a terrible idea. After October 7th, 2023, and Hamas's launching of a war against Israel, that changes the equation, and there have to be consequences for it. And that's the reality. Now, what those consequences wind up being, I don't know exactly, and neither does Friedman or anybody else, and maybe not even Trump, too. But what Trump is trying to do is to change the conversation to something that is more realistic. The fact is, the 2 million Arabs living in Gaza, a lot of them would like to get out of there. It's a terrible place. It's the scene of tremendous devastation because of the war that their side started. And many of them would like to go someplace else. They've always wanted to go someplace. In fact, many of them still are technically considered refugees, even though they're the grandchildren or great-grandchildren of the original Arab refugees from the 1948 Israeli War of Independence. Meanwhile, of course, there were even more Jewish refugees from that war that have been resettled. So they can't be. It can't be both. Leave them on their land and they're also refugees. That's a contradiction. It doesn't make sense. So what Trump is trying to do is give these people an out, which would be just normal humanitarian practice in any other conflict. It's only in this conflict that this population is kept where it is, not for their betterment, but so they can be used as props in an unending futile war against Israel's existence. That has to stop, and I think Trump is to be commended for trying to change that conversation.
Jonathan Tobin, editor-in-chief of the Jewish News Syndicate and senior contributor to The Federalist. Yesterday, President Trump met with King Abdullah of Jordan to discuss Jordan taking several thousand refugees, I believe specifically children that have been displaced by conflict in Gaza. And obviously, I think highlighting them, saying, hey, look, I'm going to have this guy to the White House. I'm going to show him some hospitality. I want to show the rest of the people in the area. If you do this, you extend the olive branch, it's a good thing. At least that's how I perceive it. Your thoughts?
Well, of course it's a good thing if they take refugees. That's normal. I mean, it's their people, right? The vast majority of people who live in Jordan are Palestinian Arabs. Now, the reason why the king doesn't want to take in people from Gaza is he's deathly afraid that if he takes in a lot of Hamas supporters, which most of the people there are, his regime will be overthrown. That's the same reason why Egypt doesn't want to let in Palestinians who are allied with Islamist extremists in their country. But Trump is making them see that they can't have it both ways. They can't maintain...
Jonathan Tobin, hang on right there. We're going to come right back to you to finish that thought. They can't have it both ways. Folks, we're on with Jonathan Tobin from Jewish News Syndicate and me, Rich Valdez. Don't move a muscle.
Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right? But right. You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue our conversation. It's Wednesday night. We're live. We're national. 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number. And we're having a discussion with Jonathan Tobin live from Israel. He's editor-in-chief of JNS, Jewish News Syndicate. And Jonathan Tobin, right before the break, you were explaining how they can't have it both ways and how the neighbors, Egypt and Jordan and others, should welcome refugees, although they don't necessarily want to because they don't want to be overthrown by Hamas radicals.
Yeah, that's the conundrum here, in that the United States and Israel both want the regimes in Jordan and Egypt to survive. They're much preferable to, if they were taken over by radical pro-Iranian forces. On the other hand, they can't insist that Israel, deal with this alone. If they want peace, they know Gaza has to be broken up. And the idea, they don't want an independent Palestinian state either. That would be a threat to them. But so this problem has to be dealt with. And Trump is pushing them towards a recognition that the Palestinians in Gaza have to be given an option to leave. Many of them will, I think, undoubtedly take it, as long as Hamas is not their overlords. Hamas wants to keep people there. They want to keep them. Basically, the Arabs in Gaza are their hostages too, not just the Jews who were kidnapped. Which leads, of course, to what Hamas has been trying to do this week, which is claiming they're going to stop the release of hostages under this ceasefire hostage deal that Trump endorsed and pushed for before he became president. But now the president understands that it was, these were Biden's terms that they sought to impose on Israel. It's a terribly unbalanced deal. Israel gets, some hostages back in exchange for almost 2,000 Palestinian terrorists, as well as potentially Israel leaving areas of Gaza and allowing Hamas to take power again. Trump has rightly come to the recognition that that's a bad idea. Netanyahu has always thought it was a bad idea, but he wants to get the hostages out. So Hamas threatened to hold the hostages because they want to undermine Netanyahu. They want to destabilize him, because there's great pressure within Israel from the Israeli people. Although the Israeli people are united in their determination to defeat Hamas, they also want to get the hostages out. And
of course.
Hamas thinks it has all the leverage. It's clear the person with the leverage is really more President Trump, not Hamas.
Right. Well, and I just want to play this clip that many of us have heard already from 2 nights ago, where the president gave this address from the Oval Office and basically creating an ultimatum based on what you're saying to Hamas, saying, hey, if we don't get all these people back, all hell's going to break loose. Listen to this.
Say this, and I'm going to let that be because that's Israel's decision. But as far as I'm concerned, if all of the hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 o'clock, I think it's an appropriate time. I would say cancel it and all bets are off, and let hell break out. I'd say they ought to be returned by 12 o'clock on Saturday, and if they're not returned, all of them, not in drips and drabs, not 2 and 1 and 3 and 4 and 2.
Jonathan Tobin, based on your understanding of what's going on, you're live on the ground in Israel right now, editor-in-chief of the Jewish News Syndicate. My question to you is Israel going to be in a full speed ahead war this Saturday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, or is President Trump going to get what he asked for?
Actually, neither. There isn't going. I think Israel will if Hamas refuses to fulfill the terms of the agreement that both sides signed on to before President Trump was inaugurated, then yes, Israel will return to its task of eradicating Hamas, which sooner or later it will return to anyway. Hamas is not going to surrender and give up all of the hostages, because then that's the end of their leverage. I think that with Trump and Netanyahu having called their bluff, Hamas will return to abiding by an agreement which is very favorable to them. But I think what we have to understand is that as awful as the drip release of hostages is, and their awful condition, showing that Hamas really are monsters, Israel wants the hostages back. They're willing to pay a very high price for them. But sooner or later, this deal will collapse, because neither Israel nor the United States is going to allow Hamas to remain in power in any part of Gaza. That is a non-starter. October 7th, the atrocities of October 7th, the war that Hamas started, whose goal is the eradication of Israel and the genocide of its population, Hamas has to be destroyed. It has to be eradicated. The ceasefire hostage deal made sense for Trump before he was inaugurated. He wanted the atmospherics of no fighting going on when he was sworn in. But sooner or later, if there is to be any hope for peace, any hope for rationality in the region, Hamas has got to be wiped out. Netanyahu will have the support of the Israeli people for that, as long as he's done everything he can to get whatever hostages were alive out of Gaza, out of the hands of Hamas. And I think what Trump has done this week by talking very tough to Hamas in a way that Biden and Harris never would have, he has shown them that they don't have the leverage. They are not the powerful player. They're not the strong horse, as they say in this region. And if they want to survive, they better start giving up those hostages right away. But in the end, they're going to lose. They are not going to be allowed to survive, and they shouldn't be allowed to survive. And anybody who calls for a deal that allows them to survive is not on the side of humanitarianism or peace. They're on the side of genocidal Islamist terrorists.
Jonathan Tobin, your assessment, and I think it's probably accurate, is that they won't release all of the hostages by Saturday, and perhaps Israel will not take action this Saturday, but that eventually they will not, they'll renege on their deal. I guess my question is, what is the scheduled release of the hostages per the agreement?
Well, the agreement calls for the release of, I think, another 20 or 30 hostages strung out over the next, couple of 2-3 weeks, the 42-day initial phase period, and then supposedly negotiations to get the other few dozen left. And what will that mean for the on the ground in Gaza? I think no one seriously believes there will be a phase 2 or phase 3 deal. It's just illogical. Israel isn't going to hand Gaza over to Hamas after everything that this country has gone through in this 1.5-year war. So as I said, sooner or later it's going to blow up. It's probably not going to blow up right now because Hamas knows that if it really doesn't give up any more hostages, and of course they also are probably worried because anybody who's left in there are probably in the same horrible condition that the last
right,
trio
and getting
were,
worse.
Which is, and it's prompted a kind of strange debate inside this country in Israel, where everybody agrees that Hamas are monsters, but there's a disagreement on what the response to the condition of these released hostages should be. There's a certain group, and certainly among them are the families of the hostages, and we can't blame them for taking this position, as well as some of Netanyahu's political opponents who sort of have hijacked, that cause. They say, oh, yes, they're monsters, they're Nazis, let's appease them, let's give them whatever they want in order to save the lives of anybody who's left in Gaza who are among the kidnapped. And then there's the other side, which says, yes, they're Nazis, we've got to get rid of them. We can't keep empowering them. We can't let them go back. We can't go back to it as if it was October 6th, 2023, and let Hamas be in charge of what was, for all intents and purposes, an independent Palestinian terror state. That's a difficult, problem for Israelis to sort out because they want their people back, and they also know that these are horrible, implacable enemies who can't really be, negotiated with in any realistic manner, which is what many people thought before October 7th, that, well, Hamas, yes, they're terrible, but they'll stay in Gaza. They're no danger to us. Obviously, that was a mistake. That was wrong. And what we're now seeing is the consequences of that mistake. But in the end, no Israeli government, no matter who's leading it, people focus on Netanyahu, is going to allow Hamas to remain in power in Gaza. And the heartening thing was that after pushing this deal on Israel, President Trump now clearly is speaking very clearly about the necessity of getting rid of Hamas, solving the Palestinian refugee problem, which has lingered on, in the 1940s. So let's remember, very brief history lesson. In the aftermath of World War II and the break, the partitions in various, post-colonial places like in India, there were 65 million refugees in the world. What was the response of the international community to this very big problem? The then newborn United Nations created 2 refugee agencies to deal with these 65 million refugees. One agency was created, it's UNRWA, UNRWA, was created just to deal with the 700,000 Arabs who fled what had been the British Mandate for Palestine and then became the State of Israel, as well as parts that were occupied by Egypt and Jordan. And there was one agency just for them. And then there was one agency for all the rest of the world, the other 64,300,000 refugees. What did those 2 agencies do? The one that was in charge of the whole world, everybody else, they did their job. The UN High Commission for Refugees, they resettled all of these people in Europe and Asia and India and you name it. They all found new homes, and there are no refugees left from there. The one that was in charge of dealing with the Palestinians kept them in place. It didn't resettle them. It specifically didn't resettle them. It kept them there as props, as hostages, in order to continue the war to destroy Israel. And now we're dealing with the consequences of that decision, which the international community and several American administrations were willing to acquiesce to. Mm-hmm. And so now Trump is finally the one who is saying, hey, let's resettle those refugees. Let's get them out of there. They're doing no good. Gaza is just it's a dagger pointed at Israel. Hamas and the rest of the Palestinian political parties and terror organizations view Palestinian civilians as just cannon fodder for a war, an unending war to destroy Israel that will never succeed.
That's
Trump
really well
cut
said.
To the chase and said, no more. And there have to be consequences for your decision. After all, the Palestinians have been offered independence and statehood numerous times.
Right, and they've rejected it every step of the way. Jonathan Tobin, I need you to stick with me for a second. We have to take a quick pause right here. We're going to come right back to wrap up with Jonathan Tobin, editor-in-chief of the Jewish News Syndicate, live from Israel. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our discussion with Jonathan Tobin from JNS. Jonathan, I want you to let the audience know how they can keep up to speed with all of the great work you guys are doing and how they can follow you.
Well, you can follow me personally on X at Jonathan_Tobin. You can read all of the work that we do at JNS at our website, jns.org. And you can watch or listen to our podcasts, my Jonathan Tobin Daily, as well as my Think Twice Weekly podcast at the JNS channel on YouTube and on all of the podcast platforms.
Outstanding. Well, it's always a pleasure to speak with you. It's always it's an education, honestly. I appreciate you making the time to be here. I hope to have you back on soon to get another update. And Godspeed to you, my friend.
Thanks very much. It's been great being with you.
You bet. Likewise. And amigos, your calls and more, open phones across America this Wednesday night, live and national, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. I want to hit the phones. Let's go to, hold on a second, Rich in Rochester, Minnesota, KROC. Rich, go right ahead.
Hey, Mr. Valdez, you're doing a great job, just to let you know.
Thank you, sir.
Just so you know, I've been around for many decades now, and I've been listening to the reports on DOGE. And just so you know, this corruption isn't new. It's been going on for decades and decades and decades. And they got to remember that this went on during Republican presidencies as well as Democrats. So you can't just blame it on Democrats. And it's not just only Biden as well.
Oh, yeah. Listen, that's why I think they like to call it the deep state, because the deep state knows no party, right? It's really that permanent establishment that loves to spend and siphon money, and I think you're 100% right. Rich in Rochester, Minnesota, KROC. Thank you for the call, brother. I appreciate it. And let us continue. Let's move it over to West Virginia, Charleston, West Virginia, WCHS. Tommy, how are you?
Okay, Mr. Valdez, and I want to say this is one of the few times I've called you where the fact that you are Puerto Rican or of Spanish heritage it'll help me make my point, because you'll see what I'm saying. What does El Tren de Aragua mean? It means the train of water. That's the literal translation. But what does it philosophically mean? Think about the guys who started this gang. And all organized crime for a couple thousand years are based on the same things. That means water finds its own level. We'll do all the shenanigans, all the guff that we could give a given society until they stop us. Just the way a backwater flood takes as much real estate as God allowed with the rainfall. And right now, and I said to your producer, and then lo and behold, you used the word update. Yourself covering the story and your guest just before the calls, you updated very well on what's happening. And I want to say, although I am not a big fan of our president, but he's doing, and his appointees are doing the right thing on this issue. You got to tell these thugs, these gangsters who peddle in stolen goods, prostitution, dope, and gambling to whatever.
You got to draw the line somewhere, right, Tony? I mean, Tommy, if you don't, otherwise they'll step all over you. I hate to cut you short, but I'm getting the message in my ear. I got to take a pause here. But thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Always good to hear from my favorite New Yorker in West Virginia. Folks are coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
To the phones we go. Open phones across America with me, Rich Valdez. Let's go to Daniel, Joplin, Missouri, KZRG. Daniel, go quickly.
Hey, good evening, Mr. Valdez. I just wanted to talk to you real quickly. Brief history about myself. I spent 21 years in the Navy. I've been through 26 different countries around the world, and I want to apologize for my voice. I've had back-to-back flus. My voice.
Daniel, we're up against the music, man. I'm sorry, but I know that you wanted to say something about good and evil and order versus disorder. Unfortunately, we don't have time to get all of that out. I appreciate your service to our country, and everybody on hold, thank you for your calls. Hasta la próxima. Until the next time, America, take care, good night, and God bless you. I'm Rich Valdez.